This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it is time for Avoid the Maze. And as many of you know who have listened to our podcast for a little over a year now, Avoid the Maze is a journey, and we're all on a journey. And one of the things I love doing on this program is talking to coaches who got on their journey of coaching because of something that may have happened in their life along the way, or maybe in somebody else's life where they said, I think I could be a good guide. And today I have Catherine with me on Avoid the Maze. I met Catherine through a group called podmatch.com. It's almost like a dating site. And so for today, Catherine and I are sort of on this virtual date to get to know each other a little better and for her to help guide us a little bit. So welcome, Catherine.
Thank you, Karen. A real pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me on the show today.
Sure. So as we were talking before we went live today, many of us start out at a young age saying that we know exactly what we want to do. Sometimes it's, I want to be a fireman, I want to be a policeman, I want to be a ninja warrior, I want to be Miss America, whatever. And yet, as we evolve over the years and meet different people and get acquainted to a vast opportunity of choices, sometimes we find ourselves in a place that is very confusing. We're in that maze. We're up against the wall because we have this chatter that's telling us what we should do. And we have this chatter over here telling us, oh, no, don't listen. And I always go back to my cartoon days as a little kid. That was, you would see it in all the cartoons, the little red devil over here and this really nice princess or prince telling you all the good things. So, Catherine, give us a little bit of background. Like, what made you decide to wake up one morning and be a coach?
Sure. This has been kind of a long time coming. So I think with most people, some of my clients, as well as just friends and family and people that I talk to, it's things that have sort of been on the mind and have evolved or progressed into a certain state. Then they find themselves like, God, I've been thinking about this for a long time. Why haven't I done it? And they dive in. And that's similar to what happened to me, is that throughout my life, I think I was always on the pursuit of purpose. So even in my early 20s, knowing that there was more in life that I wanted to do and wanted to be, and just didn't know exactly what that was. And to kind of fast forward, when you're in your mid 20s, most people are conditioned to like, make sure you finish school, find the right partner, start thinking about having a family. And not that that wasn't a part of what I wanted. It was just that it wasn't what I wanted now. And I knew that there was so much more that I wanted to explore in life in general. And at the time, I certainly didn't have things figured out. Not a lot of us do in our 20s. It's kind of the time to explore and venture and experience things. And even though, my friends and I had that feeling of like, well, we think we're on the right path, we're getting our career together. Some of us were like, well, I'm not really sure exactly what it is that I want to do. And even though I didn't know what I wanted to do, I could almost feel like I could see certain things within people, meaning that, oh, I think they'd be so great at this, or just, I've always been a very, very observant person, and naturally drawn to like see when people get really jazzed and the things I say that make them tick.
Sure.
And so I would start like handing out books to people. So one was What Color is Your Parachute? That was pretty prominent at that time from my generation, I guess. And I just naturally always wanted to help people and help people find some clarity or some kind of path or vision for themselves. And not that I did that on like a real rigid basis. It was just, fluid conversations with people and friends and family. And then, fast forward, getting towards my 30s and realizing like I just wasn't living the way that I wanted to live. And I wasn't, like I said, ready to settle down and start a family or any of that. I really wanted to explore a lot more about the world and myself. And I ended up realizing that to do that, I should say, I always wanted to leave the place where I grew up. And so I decided, I had been laid off from work, and I had a couple of months off, and I said, you know what is it that I really want out of my life? And I knew that it wasn't where I was. So I decided to move, and I moved without a job and by myself, moved across
Wow.
the country, and started a new life. And it's been, obviously challenges and bumps in the road, but it's been absolutely amazing. Just what I've explored and experienced. Now that I guess I'll take this even further than that.
Sure.
So 3 years, or I should say 4 to 5 years into my move. So I've been moved for 17 years now. So 4 or 5 years into my move, I really started to suffer a burnout in my career. And I've always been in sales and business development. And at the time I was working in the outdoor industry, which is a really fun industry, because if you're passionate about being active or being outdoors or being connected to nature, then that's an awesome industry
Sure.
to be connected with. And so that really resonated with who I was as an active, physically active individual and someone who cares about the planet. And so I started to suffer this burnout, and I ended up staying in it for a 2-year period, and realized as I was coming out of that and recognizing, what it is that got me into burnout was the things that were driving me in my career were not the things that were resonating with who I was. And I was looking for more meaning and trying to find that connection with my values and finding alignment with who I was as a person. And that company offered a lot of that. And I did stay with them for a very long time because of that, because there was alignment. But eventually I started to recognize that every time I had more space, or when I was maybe not super happy with how things were going, I would naturally be drawn to the coaching side, or I would always be tapped in somehow to helping people. Maybe they were stuck, even though I was stuck, I was still helping them before I was helping myself. And it got me to think more about who I was and what I really enjoyed doing. And I ended up hiring a life coach myself. And although I didn't work with her very long, she at least got the spark going for me in terms
Sure.
of, what am I actually doing in my job versus what is it that I really want to do? And things that naturally I do, meaning the helping people and coaching just comes naturally to me. And so I started my journey from there and recognized that it was time to make a change. And so that didn't happen, of course, for another 5 years, I would say. And I ended up getting certified in 2020. And we had a transition at our work anyway. So I knew that I was going to be changing jobs. And at that time, I decided there's no better time than now to actually take this leap, get certified, and really hit the ground running and start doing what it is that I feel I can make a bigger impact in this world than just working for one company as a sales or business development director or manager. Or my goal was to be a VP, but I feel like as a coach, I now coach businesses, I coach professionals, I coach individuals, all on a foundation of purpose. For the business side, a lot of it is focused on purpose-driven sales. And I'd say that, it's been great because I do see the bigger impact that I have working individually versus working as an employee within an organization right now. It's not to say I'll never go back as an employee, but for this time and period in my life, this is what feels right.
I find it interesting that I know when I was growing up, it basically was, by the time you're about 20, 21, you should have an idea of what you're going to do with the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And my life certainly did not follow that pattern. But I always thought I was the only one. Okay. Not the only one going through a divorce, but the only one that, well, my second husband is totally different from my first husband. And my first marriage is totally, everything is just totally different. And the same thing with my jobs. As I went through them, I didn't think about any of my jobs as a career. till much later in my life.
Hmm.
And so I look back thinking of what my parents taught me. Oh, by 2021, Karen, you're going to be on this path and you're going to know what you're going to do. And that's what you're going to do for the rest of your life. And um, I just remember sitting in my house one day thinking, is there something wrong with me?
Hmm.
I've jumped from business to business. I've certainly learned a lot. Some of those jobs I enjoyed, some I did not. But when I realized at that moment I wasn't alone, okay, other people were doing the same thing,
Hmm.
that I finally was able to stop judging myself and saying, look at all the terrible things you've done, instead of saying, look at everything you've learned.
Hmm.
What went right? What went wrong? Or did anything go wrong? Maybe it didn't. And so when I started podcasting 10 years ago, that's when I knew that, like you, I love to help other people, but I was finding myself up until that time, I was over helping other people,
Hmm.
meaning that I would just jump in and take it away from them. Here, I'll just do it for you. Doesn't that please you? And it would be like, yeah, that pleases me. So the next time I need it done, you're going to do it again. And it was like, this has become overwhelming.
Yeah.
And that's where the techniques from coaching have totally changed my lifestyle. And I see how it's helped you as well, that there are certain things that you like to do, but sometimes we have to look at it in a different way. How can we do that without taking away from who we are?
Hmm.
So, coaching a large business compared to an individual, you got to sort of take one hat off and put another hat on, correct?
Yes. Yes. Because a lot of times coaching, so there is a difference, a big difference, and not everybody understands the difference of coaching, consulting, counseling. And so an easy way to think of this is, counseling is for mental struggles, mental illness, things that are driven by or derived from trauma, mental illness, depression, anxiety. That's not what a coach does. That's what a counselor handles. And a coach manages where you are today and helps you build a roadmap based on who you are. They don't tell you how to do it. They draw from you the things that innately are part of you and how you think and how you be. And they help develop a new road forward. So a coach is always moving you forward versus counseling that, sometimes has to dig deep
Exactly.
into the background. And not that we don't look at some of the background things like patterns and stuff, but we do it at such a shallow level. So a good way that a coach presented this to me in my early days of certification were, when you think of a pool, the counselor handles like the deep end and the coach handles the shallow end. So to give people a bit of that visual. And then consulting is someone you hire to be told how to do something. So coaches don't tell, they ask questions and uncover. Where consulting, they might ask questions, but they're really there to tell and share their expertise of how they've accomplished or achieved something. So yes, when you're dealing with businesses, or when I'm dealing with businesses as a whole, it's usually small pockets of teams within a business, or some individuals within those businesses. But sometimes there is that where I have to say, okay, I'm taking off my coaching hat for a minute. I'm putting on my consulting hat. And the reason is that, I can then add some of my expertise that I've had over my 20-year career in sales and business development to help guide them to the place that they want to get to. So
And
yeah, there are differences.
Yeah, and that is a very good explanation. I thank you for that, because in the past 2 weeks, I sort of made an announcement to the different coaches I've been working with and those that I've been interviewing, and saying, I believe in coaching, but I know myself, I'm not a very good coach, because I tend to want to just jump in and do it for you.
Right.
And that's not a good coach. but I believe in coaching. And I've taken lots of, classes and gone to seminars. And so I have now labeled myself as the coach advocate, because
Nice.
individuals, um, they don't know. They don't know the difference between, well, do you think I should go for counseling? Well, that's not for me to decide. Okay. But let's talk about where it is that you want to go. What is it that you want to change? Um, and do you want to make the change? Or do you have somebody sitting next to you that's saying, you better change or else? Um,
Yes.
and, I've seen that happen. And so what I tell individuals is, look at, there are lots of coaches out there. They deal with a lot of different pathways. Until you find the right one, what I can do is I can tell you what this one specializes in. I'll lead you to the podcast. You'll listen to them. You'll go to their site. And now it's like, I'm so glad I'm not doing this alone. I'm totally
Yeah.
afraid. And most of us are afraid,
Right.
you know. So your explanation of counseling, consultant, and coach was so perfect, because
Thank you.
I've been the consultant. I've, and I know, because I've been a consultant, my personality does not lead me to coaching. It's so much
Mhm.
easier for me to dig deep and say, okay, business wise, this is what we need to do.
Mhm.
So hallelujah to you that you can wear both hats, because
It's not always easy because, when the audience, if they don't understand what role each plays, then
right,
sometimes they just sit there and think, well, I'm a real busy professional. Why aren't you just telling me what to do? And it's like, because that's not the idea. The idea is that I'm helping set up a foundation that you have, that you will take with you wherever you go after this,
exactly.
coaching opportunity, and be able to build your own opportunity, create your own answers that will suit you the best.
Well, and it's
Yeah.
also important for us to understand that these obstacles that we face on a daily basis, sometimes we recognize our obstacles, and sometimes they can pull us back in the day.
Mhm.
And sometimes we look at them as opportunities, and sometimes we don't even see them at all.
Yeah.
Somebody may tell us later in the day, hey, how did you do that? There was this big wall and you seem to have like flown over it. Don't know,
Mhm.
but I did it. Um, but what I find really important is for somebody to be able to help me dig deep.
Yes.
Okay. Because when you talk about purpose, and uh, for so long, somebody would have asked me what my purpose was. It was always hinged on helping somebody else,
Mhm.
but it wasn't something that I had to do. I just felt, hey, what else am I going to do with my life if I don't, you know, volunteer at my son's school, if I don't learn my husband's new IT business, if I don't do this, then I'm nothing.
Mhm.
So somebody one day said to me, don't you have a favorite color? Don't you have a favorite season? And I looked at them. I was like, well, yeah. Well, start digging deep. Find out what your
Yeah.
purpose is. And when I started doing that, it was like, oh, I don't have to ride my husband's coattails. I don't have to,
Right.
just be my son's mother. Okay.
Yeah.
Or just another corporate person. So when somebody comes to you like that, how do you help them develop their purpose or find their purpose?
Sure. I have a workshop, and as well, it's part of a program that I have, which is called Ignite Your Soul. And that is all around awakening your purpose. And the way that I coach around purpose is that I think there's still confusion around what living with purpose is, or what your life purpose is. So some people think, like, if I just find what I'm passionate about and then do a job that relates to that, then I'm living my purpose. And that's a part of it, but it's not really the full 360 of how you start fully living with purpose. And the way that I coach it is really 3 parts. So one is passion, purpose. It's not life purpose, but purpose, and then soul purpose. And the difference of those is that passion are the things that, yes, you love doing. You can do them at nauseum, I say. And they are things that strike an emotion, because passion is actually the emotion in what you're doing. It's not necessarily the actual physical thing that you're doing. It's the emotion that you're getting from it. So, when some people get really excited about talking about something, or sometimes they get really assertive about something, and it's like, but they're passionate about it because they care.
Right.
So if you can think of it that way. And then purpose is the why behind it. So if you're in business, likely you've heard of Simon Sinek. I call him the Messiah of why. He's the guy who wrote the book. I think a lot of us understood the concept of it at some point, but he's really the guy that put it on the map, I think, from a business perspective and professional perspective. And so the why is why you're doing these things. What is it that you get out of it? Why are you doing it? Is there a mission? What's the value for you? Why is it that you're doing it? And then soul purpose. Soul purpose is something that I believe we are just born with. When children are growing up, people start saying like, oh, they're just so good at this, or they're great at that. And there's little things that you can pick out that your child just naturally does.
Sure.
And I think as adults, same thing, right? You are maybe known amongst your group as the person who just listens really well. So people take their stories to you or their situations because you just listen very well. Or maybe you're the best communicator in the group. So, maybe you're the one that people rely on when organizing things, or, maybe at work, it's that you're always the presenter because you communicate very well. So these little things are what I consider soul purpose. So it's the way that you naturally are as a person. No one's necessarily taught you that. It's just something you innately do. And so those 3 things combined are really what you can create life purpose from, because life purpose truly is a mission that brings value to you or brings value to others, or both. Usually it's both. But in saying that, when we uncover these 3 areas, passion, purpose, and soul purpose, we start looking for alignment in them and correlation. And then we look at what could be a possible career or a possible business that you want to start, to get you on the right path, because it's something that will fully resonate with you when it comes from those 3 components.
Well, when you're doing something that ignites your soul,
Yes,
it's much easier to do it than, and I just said this yesterday in another podcast. I didn't have a career path. I had a job path. And so a lot of those jobs were, I'm going to make sure I put food on the table. I can take care of myself.
Mhm.
And maybe occasionally I can go and buy myself something. And it really wasn't until my last job in corporate America that all of a sudden it was like, whoa, this is a career. This is
Right.
what I want to do. But I started getting very upset with myself. Why did it take me so long to get here? And I had to get rid of that attitude because it was holding me back.
Yes.
And once I let go of it, it was like, okay, so I found it. Now let's do it. But what I want our listeners to understand, that even though you have found it and maybe you're doing it, it doesn't mean it's going to last the rest of your life.
Yes.
And that's what I found. The culture that I was working in was very toxic towards the end. And I just knew, I'm a people person, so I was taking it all on. And before I realized it, I was depressed, and it was like, but I found my niche. I found what I really love.
Right.
I found my purpose. Oh, this is exciting, but I have to give it up. And, that was tough, but I gave it up because I had to take care of me first. So to our listeners out there, is it easy? No, but life's not supposed to be easy as far as I'm concerned. Because when you meet the challenges, you learn so much.
Yes. definitely. So I would just say on that point too, is like people are of the mindset, I think as well, because they see people saying, I'm living my purpose now, and they seem so happy and life gets better or looks great. And it doesn't mean that life will always be easy. It doesn't mean there won't be challenges. It doesn't mean that you won't be faced with certain situations that will be difficult to make decisions around. But life purpose is a foundation. There really is a key foundation within your life purpose that will, whether you're doing this type of job or this type of job, there's still that element within it. So when you're saying, like, you were kind of like, well, I thought that was my life purpose, and now I feel I have to change, but that's okay, because as humans, we are meant to evolve.
Yep.
And sometimes people don't realize, but when they do become quite stagnant, I mean, some people are very adverse to change, which is fine. And that's innately part of who they are. But if you are changing, like, I always hated when people would say, like, oh, I'm not sure what John's doing these days, or Joe's doing these days, or Sally, because she's on her third career. I've got air quotes here. And the truth is, there's a lot of studies out there that show that a lot of people actually have about 4 careers in their lifetime. And it's because as humans, we evolve. Like you were describing, you know, in your early 20s, you were a very different person and you were like certain things and you worked a certain way. And then later on in life, you found something new. That's actually very natural to do. I think it's unnatural to think that you will find one thing in your 20s and do that for the rest of your life. There might be components of that. I mean, if you're someone who became a doctor and you knew that that's always what you wanted to do, then yes, you're probably going to be a doctor for the rest of your life. But there's something different about that to someone who is maybe not in that type of profession. But as well, those doctors probably evolve within their role too and start creating different things. So I think people need to be less afraid of, like, oh, how is it going to look that, you know, I once was this in my career and now I want to do this. I think go for it. If that's truly how you feel today, then that is probably where you're meant to go.
Well, and we have to stop being so judgmental on ourselves as well as on others, because
Yes.
that was one of the big things that I was going through, because I looked around and I saw what I thought was all my friends staying down this straight path, and my path was changing. And it was like, well, Karen, you can't do that, because if you do that, you're going to disrupt your core of friends and family. And I even heard friends and family say that to me. And it was, you know, I finally had to get to that point of saying, it's not that I want to disrupt it for you.
Right.
But I need to make that change. Okay.
Yes.
You know, going down the same road all the time, everything looks the same. And it's just not fulfilling to me. And I remember at one point somebody saying to me, well, are you sorry that you're married? Are you sorry that you're a mother? And I said, it's not about being sorry about those things. I just need to evolve a little differently. And
Yeah.
I will tell you and all of our listeners that within the last couple of years, the growth that I have found is astounding to me, because many of us think that once we hit 50, 55, you know what, nothing's going to change in our life. And that is totally wrong.
Totally wrong.
Yeah. You know, I have changed my platforms here. I've added different things that I do that I like. I am more open-minded than I've ever been before. And that doesn't mean I have to agree or disagree. It just means I'm open-minded. I'm listening to what's going on around me, and making my choices there. Do I still bump into those walls in the maze? Absolutely. Because that's what life is about.
Well, and sometimes that, you know, I love the title of your podcast here, or the radio show is, you know, the maze. Yes, if you get, you know, hit a wall, then that's something telling you that things need to be thought of differently. And there is maybe another way or a better way or a different way to be approaching this. And so it's there to stop you and say, hey, maybe take notice of this. It might be time to start, you know, flipping a switch and changing some direction here. And just like maybe could be helpful too to some of the audience who is confused about, purpose and life purpose. And, my life purpose isn't necessarily, it's not being a coach. Being a coach allows me to live out my life purpose, which is to help empower individuals to live with more purpose in their life. But I also have my podcast, Fearless Future, with Catherine McCourt, that is there as a platform to also help people and intrigue them to start making or notice things in their life or start making changes or helping them through transformation, whether it's their life or their career. So being a coach isn't the life purpose. The empowering individuals to live with purpose, to prosper, I call it, that is my purpose. There's a big difference.
Oh, absolutely. I would never say that podcasting is my life purpose,
Right.
but
yeah.
it gives me an avenue. Okay.
Yes.
And I'll never forget, and I've shared this many times. I moved in with my mother for the last 2.5 months of her life. She had no idea that she was ill or dying. And I just thought, I need to be there.
Yeah.
And I was doing my podcasting from her living room. And so I would leave her bedroom and I'd say, Mom, I'll be back in about a half hour. I'm going in the other room and I'm going to do my podcast. And she would listen intently, to what I was saying. Obviously, she didn't hear the other side of the story at that point. But one day she finally said to me, are you a famous broadcaster?
Aww.
And I looked at her and I said, absolutely, Mom. I'm your famous broadcaster.
Aww.
And I've thought of that ever since. It's
so nice.
We can create who we want to be. Okay.
Yes.
And I think that is what coaching helps us with. We're not necessarily going to be the person that somebody else has designed for us.
Right.
Such as when I was going to college and my parents said, yes, you're going to get a teaching degree and then you'll go teach and then you'll get married and you'll have X amount of kids. And it sounded wonderful, except for the fact I didn't want to be a teacher.
Oh, see?
And it was like, well, you can't tell me to be a teacher. And my parents looked at me and they said, yes, we can, because we're paying for college.
Yes.
And it took many years after that for me to explain to them, look at, even if I had gotten my degree in teaching, I probably wouldn't have accepted a teaching job because that wasn't me. And my parents were disappointed because they just thought it was going to be a great career and, everything would fall into place. But I think they too realized that everything was falling into place. Everything that was happening at a moment was meant to happen.
Yes.
And we learned from it.
And I think that's what happens. I mean, to your point and exactly your story is we do things based on family pressures or family guidance, friend guidance and pressures, society pressures, the way that we're supposed to live our life, right? Like in that motion of like,
Right.
You grow up, you leave high school, you go to college, you go to university, you get a job, you find a partner, you start having kids, you start building wealth. Like there's just this like map, this roadmap that everybody seems to be on, but it's not innately for everybody, or the time frame of each thing is not perfect for everybody.
Exactly.
But everybody seems to live this way, and then they wonder why so many people do wake up some days, and it's not that they're unhappy with what they've done, but they kind of rethink like, oh, if maybe I had gone after this first, or maybe if I had waited on this, or maybe if I had done this first. So that's just a true or evidence, I guess, in terms of like you didn't necessarily want to be a teacher, that there was always moments or opportunities that showed up that would start steering you in a new direction. And those are the things that people need to listen to and recognize and not be afraid of, when those things happen. Or if they lose a job, take that opportunity as an opportunity. And yes, it's fearful and it's challenging and scary, but the truth is it's probably, hopefully if you believe in the universe or some force, like there is something telling you that it's time to change your path.
Absolutely. Well, and I think the pandemic did that for a lot of us. It made
Hmm.
us take a look and say, number one, hey, I've been isolated for a while, and um, I thought I liked being isolated, but you know what? I'm That's not who I am. And there are others who thought they were these wonderful extroverts and found out they needed more alone time. And again, we're seeing in the field of jobs and careers how many people are making the switch,
Hmm.
and some deciding not to even go back to work. Um,
Yes.
and sometimes that's a little hard for me to process. Um, but you know what? If if that person is happy,
Yes.
then they should follow their dream, and like you said, they will find what their purpose is. And purpose can change, can't it?
Yeah, so when I was explaining before, like there actually is a very foundational part of purpose for you, but what changes is how you approach it or how you deliver it to the world. So, for example, that I used with my coaching. So, coaching is a way that I empower individuals to live with more purpose, but prosper from their purpose. My podcast does the same thing. I can coach sales and business development for people who are truly passionate, and that's their purpose, is to help, you know, benefit other companies with their product or service, or benefit people with from their products or service. Is also some way that I help them prosper from their purpose. So prosper from purpose is really the foundational part of what I do, and what lights me up is seeing where people tick and getting them to a place that they actually are prospering from. And it doesn't necessarily mean monetarily, it could mean just fulfillment within themselves. That's what makes me tick. So that's the foundational part of my purpose. But there's so many different ways that I can actually deliver that to people and help people. So that's where the changes. So when you say, people changing careers, yes, they might change careers to follow their purpose, but then there's something within that job or that career that they are doing that is the foundational key part of that purpose. Does that make sense?
Yes, it
Like,
does.
maybe I shouldn't have said
Yeah.
that, but yeah.
No, it does make sense. And um, again, so many of us are waiting for that lightning bolt to say, hey, this is my purpose.
Mhm.
And I did for a long time. I mean, I'm the first one to admit that. And, it just took something very natural for me to say, hey, you know, I've been walking down a path that, has a lot of ruts in it. It's just not working for me. And when I started to find the right path that
Mhm.
felt comfortable, uh, that's when I started reaching out to a coach and saying, okay, can you help guide me? Because I'm a little scared right now.
Yeah,
It's been 50, 55 years since I've gotten off this path. And,
right.
um, and it didn't happen right away. And I hope our listeners understand that. But it really is a mindset. If you want to make changes, you can. Um, but just sometimes we have to close out the sounds around us,
Yes.
because people around us, if they if they're used to what we do, how we talk, how we present ourselves, if our change um, affects them, sometimes it's very difficult. And
Mhm.
so, and that's something that I recognized with my family in the beginning, but they were on board. Okay. So
That's
the
good.
positive changes they noticed right away. The negative changes, it's funny because they didn't really come back at me and say, hey, now you're doing this and this isn't good. What they would say to me is, now that you do this, this is really remarkable, or you're
So
amazing
nice.
at this. So that the negative stuff, you know, I didn't have to deal with it because
Yes.
I worked on my positives. And
Yes.
eventually those negatives either went away or they got toned down.
Yes. And that's a lot of the work that I have to do with my clients if they're on the path of finding purpose and awakening their purpose is around how to recognize what boundaries they have to set with certain individuals that are in their life, because it's not that these people are trying to be mean or drag you down, but they might be questioning you or making you feel like what you're doing is not worth it, or you're not capable, or why would you do it and change your life? You know, most of the time that's coming from their place of fear and their discomfort in change. But because they care about you and they have your best interests at heart, they feel that they want to help guide you. So there are boundaries that have to be set. It does get uncomfortable sometimes with certain individuals and their families or their friends, meaning uncomfortable just from the pure point of setting that boundary. Maybe they share less with those individuals about what they're doing, because they really are dedicated and committed to finding change in their life and making their life better. You know, one key thing that I remember in my I was probably 24 years old and I was working at a financial broker. And I remember this story of this man who was a VP in the banks, and he was just rocking his career. I mean, multi-million dollars is what he was making. He was managing multi-million dollars. He's just incredible individual. I was wishing that he could have been like a mentor to me. But anyways, I later found out that he had left that VP job and took a real step back, is still within the financial world, but took a step back and was making, maybe six figures now. But he was happier, his family was happier. And the reason he did it was because he wanted to take his career in finance in a different direction. But he had to start back at that point in order to gain what he needed to get to that next level. So eventually he became VP in that area of finances. But the point is that, here's a guy, he already had a family. He was probably in his late 30s, maybe early 40s. And he took this really big change, and everyone was like, what are you doing? Like, you've set yourself up so well. Like, look at the money you're making. Your family's great. You go on vacations. You have a beautiful home, like all this stuff. But it wasn't making him happy. And so when I heard that story, when, I was only 24 at the time, I was literally starting my career. That always stuck with me till today. Just how, try not to be afraid if that's something that is going to fuel you in a better way, make life better for you and make you a happier person, then who's to say it's wrong?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love the story, because what it tells us is that, if you have a deep purpose, if you're passionate about something, you will find a way to make whatever changes you need to make and be successful. And again, success, we have our own barometer on it. It's like me telling my mother, yes, I'm the most famous broadcaster that you know.
Yeah.
It's like, I wouldn't go out on the street and tell people that, but
Yes.
it was comforting, and it made me realize, okay, what are some of the things I want to do to really improve upon this? And I've gone through various gyrations here at New Cleveland Radio with all of our podcasts, starting out one way and then redeveloping and then evolving, and then sometimes having to say, no, that's not a good fit. And it's not out of meanness. It's about finding, what works for me, what works for my clients. In the same way with you, when somebody comes to you for coaching, you're going to have them show you the path that they want to start walking down. And you'll ask the questions, and sometimes they're difficult to answer. But
Yes.
I'll tell you, every time one of my coaches will ask me a question, if I answer it too quickly, I realize that, I'm kidding myself, because if I stop and think about it, it's a more difficult question to answer. So Catherine, how can our listeners find you?
I have a website, so it's my name, CatherineMcCourt.com. And I won't spell it because I imagine you'll have it in the show notes.
We'll have it in the show notes.
It's a long one.
Right.
Okay, so CatherineMcCourt.com is my website. I'm also on LinkedIn under my name. And I also have a LinkedIn, which is my podcast one too, which is called Fearless Future with Catherine McCourt. I have Instagram, which is usually where I hang out. So Instagram, I have two. One is Catherine L. McCourt, and the other one is the podcast one called Fearless Future, fearless.future on Instagram. But I do online coaching. So I do coach people around the world. It's not just people here in Canada where I live. I'm on the west coast of Canada in Vancouver. So yes, if you're in that area, I certainly can meet with you in person or still do virtual. But a lot of my coaching is happening virtually, especially since the pandemic, but also because I have, an international reach through my network. So.
Well, I want to thank you so much for joining us. And I'm hoping our listeners, if they started out saying that they didn't have a purpose, that they'll delve into it and try to figure it out. Because I'll tell you, I'm a much happier person because now I have something to really look at and achieve at. And it just makes waking up in the morning so much better. Have a great day, and we will talk to you soon.
Thanks, Karen. It was a pleasure.
Same here. Bye-bye now.
Bye.